Today I'm going to show you some techniques for properly bending down to pick something up or do activities in your daily life like gardening. So just activities that require bending down or squatting, putting on your socks and shoes. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to demonstrate the ways not to do it, because I think that's a really good way to learn, and then we'll talk about why these are not good ways to do it. We'll talk about the research, and then I'll tell you and I'll show you the best techniques and my best advice for bending down and squatting activities. So I got this toilet paper roll here, and I'm using this as my example because I've often talked about how people can hurt their backs bending down to pick up something like a toilet paper roll, because it's not about the weight of the item or how heavy it is. Oftentimes it's about how you're using your body to lift something up. So it's the function that the way that you're using your body, not what you're doing, if that makes sense. So let's pick this up in a way that I don't recommend. So say my back's been hurting today and it's just not feeling very good, so I got to pick this toilet paper roll up. We need toilet paper, right? So I'm going to go like this. Okay, so that's way number one, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's put that back down, and I'll do way number two that I don't recommend. Okay, so what is wrong with these two methods? So the first method was the perfect example of FAB, fear avoidance behavior. And this is changing the way that you use your body because you're afraid of, or there's maybe an underlying fear of hurting your back. And actually that's one of the things that promotes the cycle of back pain more than anything else, is unhealthy movement patterns. And so it creates aberrant movement or just strange movements in our body, which contributes to the problem and makes it worse. So that was the way I kind of was like, I'm gonna do this without hurting my back. That's what's on my mind. And then I kind of quickly lift out of it, so I don't spend too much time. I kind of try to use like momentum to lift up the toilet paper roll. And then the other way was the way that we learned so much of our lives. People tell us, use your legs, don't use your back. And so I'm kind of like, all right, I'm gonna use my legs. I'm not gonna use this at all. I'm trying to stay straight up and down, and just only legs. Okay, so that is an example of what I call limb dominant movement. And this is part of the cycle that also contributes to back pain. We actually want to completely shift away from limb dominant movement and develop core dominant movement. So this is moving towards the problem, not away from the problem. We have a problem here. It doesn't mean we should avoid using here. That's why it's a problem in the first place. That's how it gets weaker. It's by not using it. You don't use it, you lose it. So the very first thing I recommend, my best recommendation for properly picking something up, is to have confidence in your body and your ability to pick the thing up. So that's number one. I said I would talk about the evidence. So there's been tons of research done on what is the best form, the best method for picking something up. Is it the deadlift? Is it the squat? Is it the stoop? Is it a weightlifting technique? What is it? And just overall, without getting into the details, there is no conclusion. There is no significant difference in the amount of pressure on your discs or any of the things that they measure. It's just no significant difference. So what that tells me is it's not about what you're doing to lift up the object. It's about how you're doing it. And what's important to me is that your spine is supported. So it's not about the technique that you use, but whatever technique you use, is your spine being supported by the small spinal support muscles that are inside your core, the deep core, what I call it. And so not only do you want your six-pack abs to be engaged, but if it's a light activity like toilet paper, you want those muscles underneath the six-pack abs. There's a group of them. You don't have to know the names to be able to use them. It's more of a feeling, and you have to learn that feeling, and that takes a little bit of time. But being able to have a connection to these muscles and know that they're on and the spine is supported makes it so that your spine can, your body can bend in any number of different ways, and you have a protected, stabilized spine that's not prone to injury. So that's a major thing that I wanted to talk about. And then another thing you need to know, so there's a lot in this video, and I'm sorry, but maybe you want to take notes. The other thing you want to know is that this motion is not spine motion. This is a hip hinge. It's all hips going into this. And so when I bend down to pick up this toilet paper roll, you can see a lot of people might think, oh, he's using his back, but I'm not really bending my back at all. I'm bending at the hips. I am using the muscles around here to support my spine, but the hips are designed for big ranges of motion. I'm using my glutes, I'm using my core, and my spine doesn't actually really move at all. It's a major hinge, like a door hinge in my body, and that's what I'm using. So don't be afraid of the hip hinge. Don't think it's using your back. And also, the other thing that you kind of want to know is, even if you do use your back a little bit, say I flex in my spine right here, it's actually not really that bad for the vast majority of people with back problems. If you have stenosis and your spine is closing down in the back, forward flexion, bending, actually opens that up. And so I have stenosis, I have spondy, I have degenerative disc disease, I've got all kinds of things, and this actually feels kind of good. And I'm not saying it's good for my spine, I'm just saying it's not bad, and there's a difference. If it were good for my spine, then I could do more of it and it would make my spine better. But there's something about repetitive trauma that if you overdo things too much, it actually can create a problem. So just the difference is, don't be afraid of it and don't avoid flexion or forward bending, because it's actually probably not that bad for you if you're in the vast majority, the 80% plus of chronic back pain cases. So that's just picking up something lightly. Let's go over putting on your socks and shoes. So this is something where you actually don't just get to go into the motion and then get right out of it, but you have to stay down on the floor for a while. So it takes time. And this would apply for gardening too. So if your back is like not feeling very good and you want to do it in the least impactful way, I recommend just actually getting one foot up on something, and you want to connect to your core as you lift your foot. So connect, lift, and then you can just kind of get your foot in there, right? So this might be the tricky part, is if you have the mobility to be able to do that, and then you can set it back down. Tie the shoe, blah, 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 and that's a win. And so you want to switch legs. I use my hip flexor trick, if you have seen that video, to get my leg back down, connect, lift, and then you got to lift off, boom, tie the shoe. Same thing with the socks, right? So that's an activity that takes a little longer than just lifting up a toilet paper roll. It also, it's one of the options. So another option for putting on your socks and shoes is, what I use, if my back's not, feeling real bad, is I just sit on a low seat, like a stoop or a stair, or just a stoop in front of my door, and I do it, and off and on. And so this is okay. This involves spinal flexion, right? But I'm not afraid of it. So remember, confidence is very valuable for doing things in a healthy way that promotes your body getting stronger. So the low seat, the low stool, the stoop, whatever, is another option for socks and shoes. Let's talk about an activity where it's even longer time spent on the ground than putting on your socks and shoes. Let's talk about gardening. So gardening, you may be spending minutes down in a low position like this. And this is where the video I did on deep squats comes in. I'm not going to get into all the details, but you want to keep your heels connected to the ground if you can. If you don't need to and you have the balance, you can lift your heels off the ground. So one option is a low stool or stoop like this. You know, you sit on a little rock or whatever and you do your gardening, but that might not be an option all the time. So let's say we don't have this. Another option is to just squat with your heels up. So if you can do that and you're not afraid of, you know, spinal flexion and you have the confidence and this doesn't hurt your back, squatting with your heels up, it requires a little bit of balance, but it allows you to, you know, this is my little tree here, and putting the soil around it and doing what I got to do. If you can't do this, then the trick I showed in that deep squat video is prop something under your heels. It'll give you a little bit of balance, and it'll give you more actually ability to relax into the position. So say you're out in your garden and it's not a perfectly even surface, or maybe you have a rock or a stepping stone, you can get that right under your heels. So I'll use this as like a fake rock little mat and get that right under my heels, and now my heels are connected. I'm really able to relax in this position, and it really props me up into a position where I can do things on the ground. I can do other activities. It doesn't have to be gardening. It could be, one student asked about, you know, petting and leashing up his dog. Like, this could work for that. So the deep squat is really valuable if you can get into it. It's something you may need to work up to, and it's something that's used heavily in lots of the world. In, you know, large parts of Asia, it's a normal sitting position, and these are the parts of the world that have a significantly decreased incidence of chronic lower back pain. So to make that a goal is worth it. And so again, you can go check out the video I did with a little more in depth on just progressing the ability to get into a deep squat. So that is the lesson for today. And this is kind of like a two-part one. So next week, I'm going to be talking about actually lifting like heavy objects and carrying them. So I need to go carry something out to the car. So if you're looking for that, that will be in next week's video, and feel free to subscribe and hit that bell if you want to get a notification. So thank you, hope it helps, and I'll see you in the live portion of the stream. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the live Q&A portion of the stream. Hopefully everything's working properly for me. Let me know if you can hear me or cannot hear me, more importantly. And yeah, welcome. Thanks for being here. I see a bunch of action in the chat. And if you enjoy the stream at any point, feel free to hit that like button and support the channel so we can continue providing, you know, good information, valuable information. So let's follow up on a little bit of the things I was talking about, and I'll just show, let's see. First, I'll show this study. This was something I've showed in the past on a stream, a very similar topic stream I did, but you know, very similar to the thing that we're talking about today. And these are the different lifting techniques: the stoop, the squat, and the weightlifting technique, and no significant difference. So and the things they measured were compression forces on the discs, forward shear, which is not a good thing. That's like basically the friction that happens between the vertebrae, causes degeneration. And they measured lumbar flexion as well, as if it were a bad thing. But like I was saying, it's not inherently bad. It may be that if you have a bulging disc, that forward bending or forward flexion causes that bulge to push out more, or press on a nerve, that forward bending might be painful for you. Or it may be that your nature of your back pain in general was caused by repetitive trauma, repetitive microtrauma from excessive forward bending. So if that was part of your job or part of your posture or the way you sat. So this isn't true. Nothing is going to be across the board true for everyone. And I would be weary of you know, taking advice from anyone that is saying that there is something out there that's
true for every situation, and it's the best way to be. So you got to listen to your body. You got to constantly be learning and educating yourself out externally, but also internally, and paying attention and tuning in and figuring out what works for you. And at some point, ideally, you get to a place where you kind of figured out what works best for you. And I would say for me that I prefer this, it's not even on this list, but the deadlift, closest thing to the stoop, for lifting. And I have found that feels good for me. That's one of the things I didn't really mention, is that you actually can, with the whole confidence thing, you can go into any kind of lift, any kind of chore, any kind of activity of daily life with the mindset that let's do this in a way that is almost like I'm going to the gym and I'm actually doing something good for my body. You can take that perspective with any activity around the house, rather than let's treat this like a laborious chore that's going to hurt my body. If you see how significant that difference is, it actually changes the way that you move and the neuromuscular connections, and has a significant impact on the prolonged nature of back pain. So, if I believe I hammered this home, but for anyone who I doesn't think that, it's not about technique, it's not about form. That what you can see from the outside. It's not about what you can see from the outside. It's about what's happening on the inside. Okay? What are your muscles doing? You can't see them from the outside because they're deep to the superficial muscles, but are they engaged? Are they turned on? If so, then you could probably do a few different number of techniques, and it could feel good for your spine and for your body. And so another way to say it is, how well is your spine supported while performing the movement, no matter which technique you use. So, and to follow up a little bit more on the whole flexion isn't bad thing, vast majority of back pain cases are going to be related to a whole monster of postural just patterns. And one of those patterns is anterior pelvic tilt, and usually a little bit of hyperlordosis with some stenosis. And so it can kind of look like this, where there's a excessive backward bend in the spine, even if you're in standing. And so here's another picture. And so forward bending down to pick something up would actually open up these spaces. So biomechanically, from a physics perspective, it kind of makes sense. And from an empirical viewpoint, from my personal experience, it kind of feels okay. It's not to say that I would do that repetitively as something that is going to be good for my body. It's just, it's not necessarily bad for my body. But if you had a bulge, and like I was saying before, and forward bending caused that bulge to push out more, then it may not be the case for you. So those are just some, follow-up things. I will take a look into the chat, and then we'll get into Student Hub, Student of the Week, and questions. So I see Gerardo, you've been doing the courses, Module 3. You got the front anchor right. That's good to hear. Front anchor progression requires a lot of effort. Is it normal and expected? So the front anchor progression, where you're kind of marching, is going to require more effort because there is a bit of lift happening. Where the front anchor awareness is more, you can really just push away only. And your legs will kind of gently float up off the floor, and it almost, when you're doing it really well, it almost feels kind of effortless. You're just really connecting your pubic bone, pushing away. That fulcrum works, and the legs can kind of come up. And it's not true for everybody. Some people have, bigger legs and smaller torso, and so that's going to be actually harder for them because there's more weight on the leg side of the fulcrum. So again, it's different for everybody. But with the progression, and you're doing kind of a marching or a walking motion, there's going to be more muscle engagement to cause that to happen, and ideally that's the glutes. So if you're feeling the effort in the glutes, Gerardo, then I think that's not a bad thing. Just be careful not to let too much of it go into your lower back. Zoya, hello, module 3. All right, 2 people in module 3. Your only question, I'm glad to hear things are going well. Why do I feel tension in the platysma muscles in my neck and under the chin when I'm doing the bridge? At first, you thought it was too hard to engage my deep core, and now practicing 10% concept, and I still feel the tension. Any suggestions? Thank you. So it may be a matter of, this is not uncommon, Zoya, so it may be a matter of not so much that you are, like what your intention is or what your intensity level is, which I'm really glad that you turned down the intensity. A very good job. I pretty much always recommend that early on. To really get in tune with these deep, small muscles. But there's another factor, and that is your actual strength, your aggregate ability, the muscle's ability to perform a movement. And that is not something you necessarily have mind control over. It takes time for muscles to build strength. And so when muscles are trying to perform a motion, say like the bridge, and they're not quite strong enough to do what you want it to do, they will bring in other muscle groups to help, like the support crew. And so the neck and shoulder muscles are often brought in just as accessory muscles to help stiffen the rest of the body and make it work better as a system of pulleys and levers. And then as those muscles get stronger over time, over days and weeks and months, then you may not need to bring those accessory muscles in, and you can do it in a more controlled, relaxed way. And you see that with performance in all kinds of activities and athletes and sports. It looks effortless the better you get at it. And that's because the body is straining less. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, keep going. It sounds like you're taking the right approach, Zoya. So Lisa, you made it. I remember we talked, I can't even remember where, maybe in a YouTube comment, and you said you never make it on the live streams, but you made it. Glad to see you here. Globe Roamer, considering your program, but wondering if it's suitable. I have bilateral knee replacement and hip replacement. It's not going to be like a reason not to do the program. Best way to find out if it's suitable for you is to do the free trial. It's very low intensity, low impact. It can't hurt you. Often people feel improvement and relief in that first week. So that's where you get the best idea. But yeah, the program has actually been very helpful for people with knee pain and hip pain as well. So this is the overall approach, the full body posture that we're improving. And so yeah, the rehab doesn't stop once you get the artificial joints, as you probably have discovered. You still got to take care of the machinery. And so glad to see you here, Globe Rummer. And yeah, hope you check it out. Yindra showing up weekly. Glad to see you. You have the same issue as Zoya. So hopefully my explanation makes sense for you as well, Yindra. As you get stronger, you can continue to turn down the intensity, turn it down to 1-2%, and hopefully learn how to, I don't like using the word isolate, but for lack of a better term, more isolate the energy down low in your core. And then you can practice from there, turn it up to 3%. Say, okay, can I keep the hyperactive neck and shoulder muscles that I've been overusing as a pattern in my life for potentially a long time? Can I keep those off? And if you can, then you are in the process of overriding a movement pattern. And if you do that repetitively, then you can actually change the pattern and create a new default movement pattern. And that's the long-term goal. That cannot happen overnight, and it takes a lot of time, focus, and persistence. So but yeah, the other factor is the whole strength thing as well that I was talking about before. So NPE, familiar initials I've been seeing showing up. Everyone with neck issues can ask if you're tucking your chin down all the time when doing the exercises. I find I have to do some massage and stretching to my neck, especially at the beginning. Well, it sounds like I might have to do a stream topic on the neck coming up soon. I'm sure I'll be hearing that from some of my team. that tunes into this. So that's on my mind already. And I guess that's a question for other people. I don't know. I don't recommend chin tucks, NP. So chin tucks is like a, I would call it a conscious posture correction. And the ideal way to have healthy posture is more of an unconscious, a subconscious thing where your muscles are in balance with each other at rest. So you're not having to tense muscles to correct your posture, but you can relax into good posture. And that takes, again, time. This is a long game. That's the approach that we take. NPE, oh dear, why do I see bend, pop, and snap? I don't know that from that movie, but I'm sure that's funny. And we got WV, same Yindra. All right. So hopefully my advice is helping for you guys. You can feel free to give me some feedback. Let me know if that is making sense. I haven't made it down to the bottom of the chat yet. So WV, maybe it's ski. I'll call you ski. So it's not impossible. I've had people say that before, that it's impossible. But I've had that same person that told me it's impossible then come around and say, I did it. Oh my gosh. I was able to push away from my back anchor and elevate my pelvis. I cannot believe it. So in this case, it is going to be a matter of strength, but I believe I say this in the lesson, and I really do mean it, that you don't actually have to elevate your pelvis to get the benefits from the exercise. So whether it just unweights a little bit, you can take off 10% of the weight of your pelvis, it's still on the ground, or you unweight it 100%, you get the same amount of benefits, and potentially more actually, if your level of fitness is such that you are not able to lift your pelvis, because there's more room for improvement. But the same intention is taking place, the push away, the same engagement, and the more room for improvement actually means that you're going to get the same benefits, potentially more. So don't try and overdo it. Don't try and go 100%. Bringing in accessory muscles is not a good thing. We don't want to train that pattern. So this is about patterns. This is about creating habits. And so turning down the intensity is always my recommendation when it's a struggle. But it's totally okay and extremely common WV ski that you can't lift your pelvis right away, and it takes time to build that strength, and it's endurance as well to be able to maintain it and breathe. RG, I already answered that one. Sue, you've been excited to ask two things. All right, so I'm not catching up in the chat, I see, so I'm going to answer Sue's question, and then I'm going to go into the next portion of the stream, and then I'll come back to the chat. So that's how I got to do this sometimes, and I'm, trying to just keep up at this point. So Sue, you've been excited to ask, so you're in day 3 of the front anchors and the bridge. You can engage the core and the pelvis right. Oh, tilt the pelvis right. But your hip flexors have been getting really knotted up. Part 2 is, okay, so I'm going to assume what the question is. So like, why are your hip flexors getting knotted up? Or what to do about it. Maybe that's the question. So day 3 of the front anchor. So you're module 2 and you're engaging the core and tilt the pelvis right. One of the things that I would say is that we're not primarily focused on tilting our pelvis. We're primarily focused on core connection, pubic bone to rib cage connection, that abdominal connection. That is the anatomy, the attachments. They go from rib cage to pubic bone. And so having a strong connection there is our primary focus. And so if you're focused heavily on tilting your pelvis, hopefully that tilt is in the posterior direction, but either way, that could be contributing to what's going on with the hip flexors. We're trying to actually almost kind of separate our brain's ability to recognize when we're engaging our core and our hip flexors. The hip flexors are typically overused. They're a hypertonic muscle, just like the lower back muscles, and we tend to use them with everything. And so Oftentimes people go do exercise and their hip flexors get tight and sore and like you say, knotted up. And so, again, it's going to be about tuning into your body and really like going maybe down to 1-2% intensity and be like, all right, I feel my deep core. I check in that I'm getting fat. I feel my abdominals and I've got this engagement. And so, all right, let's go into the movement. All right, let's turn up the intensity just 1%. Can I continue to maintain this without bringing in other muscle groups to try and help out? So that could be one thing. Or the other thing that comes to my mind is, because I've experienced this personally, your body might just be going through changes. And sometimes even when good things are happening, pain can move, transitions are happening in your body, and tension can move into certain areas, and it's a little bit unpredictable sometimes. But new pains can kind of come and go, and it's kind of something I can relate to. Say you like do a detox, and you actually feel worse when toxins are leaving your body. I was like, well, that should be a good thing. Toxins are leaving my body, but you feel worse during that time. Then your body is adapting and changes are taking place, but give it time and eventually you can feel better after that, right? And yeah, there's other analogies as well, but pain moves and pain changes, and that's kind of sometimes a good sign. Oftentimes I think in this program it's a good sign because it means we are targeting. If you've had pain in, say, the lower back for 10 years and you've tried everything and nothing, it's not working, and then you do something and the pain doesn't go away but it moves, at least that means we're on the right target, we're on the right track. So the worst thing that could happen is the pain doesn't move, right? The next worst thing is that it's still there, but it moves. It's better. It's a step in the right direction. And then hopefully the goal is for it to move out of your body. So the hip flexor thing, yeah, I've experienced it. I think I've actually heard other students talk about it, and it's it can be a bit of a stage or a phase of changes taking place in the body. So part 2 of your question. Front anchor work has made your SI pain come back. I'm not sure if it's something else I did, but I'm using too much intensity. Thanks. So if you have to ask, then I'm going to go ahead and say it's most likely the case. When people ask questions like that, am I going too hard? It's like, well, yeah, most people go too hard when they don't even realize it. And if you're thinking like maybe I'm going too hard, then most likely you are. So the consistent thing with people in this population is we want to get out of back pain really bad. So we associate effort with effectiveness. So if we try harder, we will get more results. And so if you're doing something and it works, if you do it harder, it will work more. But that's actually not the case in this context, where when you engage your muscles really hard, it's a different pattern, it's a different muscle group, and we need to keep the intensity super, super low, lower than you want to. And if you think you're not doing enough, then do even less, because that's how low the intensity should be. So SI joint pain coming back, front anchor work, it could be I'm going to actually make a relationship between your first and second question. It seems like your hip flexors are super knotted up. You go into a really open position like the front anchor position, and they're at full length, full tension, and they're pulling on your pelvis and your SI joints. So that can be a little bit irritating. So I would recommend bridging and focusing on that area and getting those hip flexors to kind of open up and relax before getting into the front anchor position. Hopefully that can take some tension off the pelvis and SI joints. And then super low intensity. This is not a Superman exercise. This is like more of a meditation. And if you feel like you're just meditating there, then I'm happy about that. So hopefully that helps. I would avoid, I would watch the SI joint video, Sue. It says stop. The title is like stop hurting your SI joint. It's on our channel. It's very informative on what things actually irritate the SI joint, and those are things you should avoid for a while. So if you haven't seen that, I recommend that. And we're going to go into the next portion of the stream before I go back to the chat. So thank you all for being here, and let's get into our Student Hub Student of the Week. The tradition we have every week, we recognize a student for just exceptional participation in the Student Hub, which is our community. And this week we have like a gold star for Tom Glander. He's just been not only really helpful and really participating with answering other people's questions, and it's been a lot, but he's also saying, I love the things that he's writing to people. The types of things is really good advice. And so thank you, Tom. I really appreciate you being a teacher. And I believe that is the best way to learn, is to teach others. So I can't only imagine that you're really grasping this stuff, and by the advice you're giving, and really sinking it in to your, really actually learning it by teaching others. So thank you so much. Just giving people fantastic advice. So if you hear advice from Tom, it's been pre-approved just based on what he's saying. I can see that he gets it. So thank you for helping others. And we're giving you an extra month to your membership. So you have to do nothing, but we'll just add an extra month on the back end and keep it up. We have had a back-to-back Student Hub Student of the Week before, so keep it up and rack up those extra months. All right, so let's get into the questions. So this is a question from, Luke. And this is posted in the Student Hub. And Luke says, my muscles right above my glutes, more to the sides, maybe external obliques. Everything still working? Yeah. Okay. And to the sides of my belly, right above the hips, seem tight. It's almost like if I would grab my body from the sides, right above the hips, wrapping from the backside to the front. Not sure if this would be because of all the exercises with the deep core, but it seems those areas are always tight. Are there any stretches I can do to make that better, or will it just get better over time based on the exercises and strengthening those muscles? So this is going to be kind of a really similar question and answer to the hip flexor tightness type question. It may be, if this is like a new thing that hasn't not been going on for a while, but it's new since, say, joining the program, it may be that you have found these muscles, which is a good thing. These are the deep core muscles you're talking about. If you're talking about the muscles right down on your sides that you would grab above your hips, that's pretty specific. I would call those deep core muscles. That's the get fat. That is the get fat muscle group. And so maybe it's just that you've found these muscles, you've engaged them, and they have become tight and maybe a little sore from going from not being used very much in your life to using them a lot. And it may be that they need a little break. Maybe you'll give them a day of rest or two, or maybe not, because these are muscles that should be used. They're designed for endurance, not for power. And they're designed to be used all day long, every day. So they don't actually need days off. And you really shouldn't give them days off. But if it's that uncomfortable for you, it may not hurt, and give them some time, or some movement, some cardio, a long walk or something that get your blood flowing to loosen them up. But that's my answer if this is a new thing. Now, if this has been going on for a long time, then it's a little bit different. I don't really think that you specify, but it does seem like it's a newer thing just based on how you're saying it, because you're saying not sure if this is because of all the exercises with the deep core. So I'm going to save my answer if this has been going on for a long time, because I don't think that's the case for you. So I just don't really think it's a bad thing, Luke. I think it's actually kind of a good thing that you have found these muscles. And if it gets to be too extreme, um, then you're just going to have to back off a little bit, lower the intensity, maybe take a day off, or get some soft tissue massage and get those muscles to release. But it's about finding balance and learning how to engage all the muscles of the body synergistically, so we're not overusing certain muscles and underusing other muscles. So finding that balance is a tough thing to do, and it may be that you kind of switched into overusing a group of muscles that you weren't using before, and they're letting you know, they're communicating. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that answers your question. We do have a bunch of questions prepared, so I'm going to answer a couple more, and then we'll go back to the chat. If you're here live, just so you know, I am coming back to the chat, but just got to get through some of these. So John Tucker says, hello, Dr. Ryan. I'm about 7 weeks into your program and I love it. My question is about pain in the QL. When I do the warm-up each day before the exercises, specifically the back anchor progression, my QL starts to hurt. It hurts a little more when I start to march. Any suggestion on how to loosen this up or avoid the pain? This is a really good question, and right off the bat, I don't have an answer on deck for you, so I'm going to kind of think through this with you. QL is a muscle in your side, like your flank, basically, and so it's a muscle that feels really good to get like deep tissue massage, so that's going to be a good way to get it to relax, but it's not a long-term solution, right? We got to figure out why is it tightening and hurting in the first place. So my initial instinct is that it seems like you're just maybe using this muscle or overusing it, and it may not be that you're doing it in this exercise. Like you could actually be doing the exercise perfectly the way it's supposed to be done, but maybe in your daily life outside of exercise, the way you sit or the way you move or whatever your job is or the way you lift, if that is just your typical pattern, could be that you heavily rely on that muscle, and that's a very predictable pattern. That's a very typical common pattern, movement pattern, and it leads to pain. So that's possible. It's probable in a lot of the population. And then so that's happening. And then when you get down on the floor and start doing this exercise, it kind of highlights the problem. And another possibility is when people lay on their back on a firm surface, it does kind of trigger the back muscles to kind of relax a little bit into the floor, and actually the firm surface is very supportive, and so it is like a cue, like a tactile cue for when muscles are very supported to relax. And so muscles relaxing into the floor actually can be a little bit painful. I've experienced it myself. I don't know if anybody else here listening can relate to that, but the process of a super tense, super hypertonic muscle relaxing can be a little bit painful. And so that may be just the back anchor is a position where the back muscles can relax, and we're trying to engage the front muscles, the abdominal muscles and the deep core. So that's another possibility. And you said when it hurts more when you start to march. So marching is alternating movement, reciprocal motion, and you got two QLs, one on each side. You got two flanks, right? So that is a potential just more extreme motion. And so it's going to be engaging that muscle. And I don't know, you're 7 weeks in, so you're consistent. At this point, I'm not like thinking just stick with it a little longer. Maybe the pain is moving out of your body. It's possible. 7 weeks, that's really quick, especially if the back pain's been going on for a long time, but it's not 2 weeks, right? So So let me know, John. I'd love to actually just hear back from you what you think about the things I've already said, so that if I can have a little direction, if I was right or on track with something, then I can go further down that path before I start, trying to speculate too much. Because, like I said, I had nothing like really pops out at me with just the context that you give me. So. Let's go to the next question. And John, I'll just wait to hear back from you in the Student Hub, or even on a comment on the YouTube live stream video. So this will be the last one for now, and then I'll go back to the chat. So Seema says, I'm curious on how the concept of belly button in versus get fat conflicts with connecting with the core. Do they target different core muscles? So Seema, this is a really good question. It's a topic that needs to be talked about, and I don't think it's talked about enough. So belly button in is something that is taught in certain disciplines, and it's not taught in core balance training. Belly button in is a technique that certain disciplines teach in order to a way to engage your core, a way to support the spine, and the research just shows that it's not the best way to support the spine. So that's just like the big picture of it. Another word for belly button in is abdominal hollowing. And the evidence, the research, the studies that have been done on the different types and ways to engage your core shows that it actually decreases stability in the spine to suck your belly in like that, or bring your belly button towards the spine. It's a decrease in stability and support when compared with something like abdominal bracing, which is when it's more of a 360 degrees of engagement, and it's more of a uniform cylinder. You can think about a cylinder and the way that the structural strength that a cylinder has by the walls of the cylinder, versus a cylinder with one wall indented in. It even makes sense from an engineering or an architectural perspective that it's going to be a less strong design. So that's just, if that gives you any clarity, the get fat is not necessarily a technique as much as it is a check, like a way to check that your deep core is engaged. So the get fat lesson is teaching you how to feel with your hands and make sure that the connection that you're doing with the back anchor and the bridge is including your deep core, your obliques and the other deep muscles that are under there. And that they're not just totally turned off and not participating in your movement. So I don't call get fat a technique. I think the technique is actually the back anchor connection, the connection with the floor and the pushing away, and then also later the front anchor connections and how they fit together with the back anchor to form the anchor triad. That is the technique, and the get fat is more of a check, like a check and balance, basically, so that you make sure you're not compensating in some way, just only using the six pack, for example. So hopefully that's clear. Let's take a look into the chat and just I'll find out where I was before. NP, sound and pick are good, thank you. And RG says, cool. Mark Heim, hi doc, I've been researching your program and trying to determine if it is right for me. So far I like what you have to say. Thank you very much for the feedback, Mark. Gerardo, you're welcome. Jason, you're in module 3. All right, we got a lot of module 3 people here today. You need like 3 to 5 days on it. All right. You can feel every day you're getting stronger. Is it okay for your timeline on the program? How many days are there in the 120 days? So basically, Jason, the timeline is that you got to go at your own pace, and that's the absolute best thing you can do. Your own pace means you want to feel like you are confident with each module, all the concepts taught in each module, and that you can apply them to your body before you move to the next module. So that's the pace that you should go at, and that is the highest priority, most influential beneficial thing that you could possibly do. And I would just use that as your guide. And so 3 to 5 days for you, that's fine. 10 to 20 days for somebody else, that's fine. As long as you are spending the time and staying committed daily and continuing to build your confidence and your connection in preparation for adding that next layer, which is the next module. So you have a specific question. I'm really glad to hear you're getting stronger every day. That's the goal. That's success. So you are successful right now by what you're doing. You got to look at it that way. Your timeline is great. How many days are in the program? So there's 75 days worth of lessons. Okay, so that's I don't know how many that is in weeks, but the membership is it's every 3 months. So if you can do it in a 3-month period, that's 97 days. So if you include the free trial, so 75 to 97, it gives you about 3 weeks worth of cushion to spend more time here and there. But I really don't like the idea of looking at it as if you're running out of time, because the students actually don't need to finish the program to have success. You use the program to the degree that you need. You can get through as much as you want, and if you feel like it's worth it to renew and do another 3 months, then that is that'll give you a whole bunch more time to spend mastering the concepts. So that's the way I would look at it. But yeah, you have about 3 weeks of cushion to spend extra time if you just want to try and kind of, I don't like saying this, but like get through it in a 3-month period. I think it's much more beneficial to you to just go at your own pace, and if you don't finish the program but you've gone at your own pace in 3 months, that's the most benefit you can give yourself. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Mark Heim, background extensive sitting, psychologist, expedition cycling, significant pain in the butt and tingling down into the left foot. So cycling and sitting are both things that are contributing to the pattern of muscle imbalances that I teach about, Mark. So sitting is the obvious one, and if you haven't seen the masterclass, I recommend watching that. But that's what I'm referring to with the predictable pattern of muscle imbalances. And then cycling is kind of like exercising in a sitting position, so you're training your body while also sitting. So it's a tough one, because I know people love cycling. I know it's an addictive sport. It feels good to go fast, and it puts me in a hard position to have to tell people that have a love that the thing that they're doing is not the most ideal thing for the body. So cross training is the best solution I can come up with. If you're going to go on an expedition on your bike, then I would recommend, each day having some cross training activity that's kind of like the opposite of sitting, like the bridge or walking before and after, and also in your regular life, in your daily life, having a cross training activity. Paddle boarding, stand-up paddle is another really good one. It's open posture exercise where you can train your body kind of just not in a sitting position. So hopefully that kind of gives you something. And let's see, Sorrel. Hello, seriously thinking about doing the program, concerned you'll not be able to do the correct posture without help. How hard is it to do by yourself? I'm a 73-year-old woman. Thank you. You can do the program, so you are capable and competent of doing everything that you need to do in the program. It starts very low level, is designed for, we've had people in their 80s have just massive success in the program, and because the program starts as an infant or a baby learns how to move, and we model after that, and so it's that basic, that low level that an infant can do it, and I know that you can do that, and then everything is just a layer on top of that. And as I was saying to Jason, you don't actually have to finish the program and do everything to have success. You can have incredible improvements in your life and your back and your core just by doing, the first few modules. So, don't let the fear of not being able to do everything stop you from doing something. And actually, as you build your strength and your abilities, you get to be able to do more things. So that's a pretty cool way that works as well. Darren, great results with your core and glutes, but still have pretty constant burning, tingling originating on the left side of your spine around T7. MRI showed no herniation. Any tips? T7 is, kind of down at the bottom of the scapula, the bottom of your shoulder blades. I think that's the bottom, actually. Just like that's the anatomy used for the bottom of the shoulder blades. So right under there. Last week's video, did you catch last week's video, Darren? I don't know if you did, but it's about thoracic spine. And burning and tingling is a nerve symptom. So you got something, and there's no herniation, but there's something irritating a nerve there. And I would look, since you already got an MRI, I would look at the kind of the posture of the vertebrae. Is there stenosis in there? Or do you feel an instability when you move your body and shift around? Do you feel like there's extra movement in that area? And so if so, those would be potential causes. And I would look at stability type stuff, stability training, where you're really focusing on stabilizing that part of your spine. I mentioned stand-up paddling a minute ago. That's a good thing for stuff like that, to be able to do a full body motion and keep the spine, the vertebrae stable. I actually have a machine over here that mimics, where I can mimic stand-up paddling when I'm not on my paddleboard. And someday I'll do an episode on that, and we'll demonstrate. So hopefully that helps, Darren. But yeah, it's not a typical area, so maybe there was something from your past, but it's learning how to stabilize typically the area of the pain, especially if there's a nerve thing going on. Guillermo, good to see you, and I'm not going to catch up to the chat, so we're moving back to the slides. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to catch up to the chat today, just because it's the possibility of doing that. I don't know if it's going to happen. So if you have a burning question and you really need me to see it, you can always do there's a certain type of like super chat that YouTube offers, and you can do that, and I'll see your question. But otherwise, I'm going to go back to the slides, and we've got one from Kyle Manley. I feel like I'm doing well with the back anchoring, but when I try to push away for the bridge, I get a little lift off of the pelvis. But my pelvis, core, and legs begin to shake uncontrollably. I'm guessing my core is just very weak, and I need to spend more time in the anchoring before progressing to the bridge. Any advice is appreciated. I think you're right on with that. And actually, it's interesting. I said earlier that usually, if you have to ask, you're probably right. So you're like, I'm guessing my core is weak, and I need to spend more time in the anchoring before progressing to the bridge. Yes, I think you're right about that. And the shaking is actually, in this case, a good thing. It's a sign that your nerves, your neuromuscular system, the connection between your brain and your muscles, are learning. And that is the fasciculation is, there's different causes for the shaking, but in this case, it's most likely that they're just learning, and you're probably gaining a lot of benefit from that. You're probably, nerves learn much quicker than muscles build strength. So you can get gains in strength just from a better electrical connection without the muscles actually changing their tissue makeup. So yeah, oftentimes with the nerve stuff like that, you can get benefits pretty quickly. I would say stick with it. I would say if you're right on, spend more time on it and get to the point where you can do it with a little less shaking, and then all right, they're learning, and I'm building strength. And you don't have to wait until you've mastered this completely before you can integrate the bridge. You can actually continue to work on this while adding that next layer of the bridge. in this case. So that's my advice for you. Hopefully that helps Kyle. And the next one is from Jeff. It says, can't seem to get the front anchors, and that's okay, Jeff. It's pretty challenging. Back in the day, I debated whether I wanted to put the front anchors as module 1. And I'm so glad I didn't, because if that was like the free trial, I would have people going, man, I don't get this. It's too hard. I can't do this. And yeah, it's an important skill, but it takes time. And so the best thing you can do is master your back anchor first, and then the front anchors are going to be a layer on top. So you say, I certainly am able to connect the bottom of my rib cage. Okay, yeah, that's pretty typical. And you're able to drive your pelvis into the floor with a little bit of effort. These 2 points feel connected and make my front core taut. That's good. So hopefully when you say pelvis, Jeff, that you're referring to your pubic bone, not the top of your pelvis, like the 2 points on the sides called the ASIS. We're not driving those into the floor. That's anterior pelvic tilt. We're driving the bottom of the pelvis, the pubic bone, into the floor. That's posterior pelvic tilt. You say, but the only way I can get my legs to lift off the ground, even with rigorous glute squeezing, is to tighten the lumbar well, and then the legs lift off the ground, which is not correct per your instructions and video. Help. Okay, so this is good, Jeff. Like, you understand what to do, and your body is just not doing it right now. It's not able for whatever reason. Probably just it's a strength and endurance thing, connection thing. And so the best thing you can do, my advice, is to be patient with your body, because your mind knows what to do. You grasp this stuff. You understand. And the worst thing you can do is try to compensate with other muscles and try and like have the goal of just accomplishing what the end product is supposed to be, and doing other weird, compensations to get to that finished product. The best thing you could do is take your time to do it the right way, keep the intensity low, and get there slower, and not be so focused on the finished product, but be focused on the process and the journey of learning and building the connection and enjoying that process, so that the finished product is not really a factor. It's the intention, but you are focused where you're at right now. And over time, you will gradually get there. But, the legs coming off the ground does require muscle strength, and glutes in the predictable pattern often shut down, and people get gluteal amnesia, where they're not even functioning very much at all anymore. And depending on how long your situation has been going on, that could be the case. So it may take extra time to, get that nerve and neuromuscular connection back to the glutes and build the tree and branches of nerves going out, all those nerve roots going to all the different parts of the muscles. Those may have atrophied. And so the intention is what does that. And whether the lift actually accomplishes getting your legs off the ground or not, if the intention is the same, the benefits are the same. And as I was saying to someone else earlier, you actually can get more benefits in your situation because there's more room for improvement. And the nerves learn fast, they grow fast, and so you can see the benefits pretty quickly. So patience is probably my best advice. It sounds like you're doing things right, and persistence, and don't compensate to try, like with the lower back muscles, to try and accomplish the end goal. Just maintain the intention with that low intensity and the focus, the pure and simple focus of pushing away from your pubic bone. That you're getting benefits. That's the thing you need to know. It's the same or more than someone who is actually getting the lift, and the lift will come later. Maybe weeks, maybe months. It doesn't matter. You got to go from where you're at to the next step. That's what you have to focus on, not leaping to end product. So hopefully that helps. And we got 2 more questions, so I will look into the chat. I'm scared, but we'll do it. Leap of faith here. and I am somewhere around Linda. Okay, so I'm looking at Linda Janiga. Will you get a similar benefit doing the bridge marching while laying in the bathtub, having water assist with the lift? My lower back has been involved with 2 car accidents and feels very tender. Bathtub seems kind of like small and cramped, but if you have a giant bathtub, the only thing I don't like it is your head's going to be really cranked on by the, the tub. I've done this thing where we have a jacuzzi where we rent here, and like I hang my legs over the side, the outside wall of the jacuzzi, and I'm just kind of floating on my back in the jacuzzi. It feels pretty awesome, and I can engage my core that way. So jacuzzi, a float is good, but if your neck is cranked really hard on the bathtub, on the back wall of that bathtub, pushed forward like that, I don't actually recommend bridging up, because it's just magnifying the amount of crank on your neck, and you could cause a problem elsewhere. So it's actually a good idea. It's a good question. Water, can help, but just make sure you're not causing a problem elsewhere. Like be aware of your neck, and if you can get around that, then I think it's not a bad idea. Yindra, you were thinking the same thing. Calcium supplements. Usually I don't find them to be hugely necessary. The best way to keep your bones strong, Yindra, is through basically lifting heavy things, doing things that require strength. That is by far the best way to keep your bones strong. If they're already past a threshold where you're like not even allowed to do that, doctor says you can't do that, supplements are a thing that can help, but you got to do what you can to add stress to the bones. Adding stress to the bones, the same way you add stress to muscles, is bearing weight is the best way to keep them, and you can even strengthen them to maintain their strength. Calcium usually isn't like a thing that I recommend, but the best way to get it is through things like broccoli and almonds and other great foods like that. So Joseph Sanchez, is it normal to feel relief after doing the bridge and then after a few hours later getting tight again? Yes, that's pretty normal. Cairo says, I have possible herniated disc to put into context. So, the reason things tighten up a few hours later is not because of the bridge. The bridge actually gave you relief, so that wouldn't make sense, right? But it's typically the things that you're doing in those few hours, like walking around and the way that you're connecting to your body in your daily life, that reminds your body, oh yeah, this is the pattern that we're in, and I'm tightening up to protect or whatever. And then, and that's why we don't use exercises in this program as the solution to back pain, because if you use exercises as the solution, then you do the exercise, you feel the benefit, you go back to your normal life, and you cause the problem again. So what we want to do is we want to actually use exercises as tools to learn how to function in your normal life in a healthier way so that the problem doesn't return. So they're tools, they're not solutions. They're movement retraining tools. So hopefully that makes sense, and let's keep going. I'm making a little progress. Yundra, I don't know about calcium aspartate. NP, RE the neck. First back in video, remind us not to lift or jut your chin out. Yeah, so that's true. Which was so important to me. Also, front anchor position, your forehead is on the floor and chin is kind of tucked. Is this wrong? No, it's not wrong. NP, the thing is, we don't do chin tucks as an exercise or a correction. We do lengthening in the back of the neck as just a general intention, which has the effect of bringing the chin in, right? When your chin juts out, it shortens the back of the neck. So we just lengthen the back of the neck, and the chin tuck happens kind of naturally as a result of that. So, yep, that makes sense. Sue, thinking of the way you mentioned bringing the pubic bone upward as opposed to arching the back. I don't know what that is in reference to, Sue, so just letting you know. But yeah, pubic bone forward for sure, and arching the back for sure not. Kyle Manley, dang, you're late. Yes, I answered your, well, maybe, I don't know the timing of your post, but yeah, I answered your question for sure. Julie, could you demonstrate and talk about mechanics of how to properly move while shoveling snow, twisting, tossing to the side? I think that's how I hurt my back. Future topic, Julie, so we'll take note of this. Next week topic is already set, decided on, but maybe a future topic for shoveling snow. I think that's a good one, a good recommendation. Thank you. Lisa, besides spine, is only muscle aiding in moving your pelvic up. If inflamed disc, does it all radiate into the low abdomen area? There is only muscle aiding in moving your pelvis up. Yeah, that's the only thing is the muscles that provide that force. That's right. If inflamed discs, does it all radiate into the low abdomen area? Typically not. Radiation into the low abdomen area is typically not going to be from like the lumbar region of the spine. So that could be something different and something you might want to get checked out if that's what you're experiencing. If you're getting like nerve type pain, like tingling, numbness, burning stuff in the abdomen, I would go to see somebody about that, because that's not typically from the lumbar spine. Sue, all right, a former bodybuilder. Yep, I used to lift heavy weights, and caused myself a problem with that. All right, so how are we doing? I'm catching up. I am catching up. Let's see if we can do this. Yay for Tom. Cool. Yeah, Lisa was helped by Tom, Student Hub Student of the Week. All right. Yeah, good. NP answered the question for Kyle. Should I proceed to Module 2 if I've not been able to do a bridge? Brenda, yes, you can start Module 2. Obviously, you don't want to stop doing Module 1 stuff. You want to continue working on that, but you can start Module 2, see how it feels for you. I wouldn't go into Module 3 and 4 until you feel a little bit more confident with Module 1 and Module 2. So that's my answer there. Is it normal to feel sick after the thoracic mobility on the foam roll? I wouldn't say it's normal, but I could think of a reason, like, I could think of a couple reasons why, but it's not normal. Maybe getting upside down, if you're a little upside down when you do it, or maybe releasing some toxins in that stiff thoracic spine that's been stiff, and you loosened it up and it released some stuff maybe. Joseph Guerin, all right, I remember you from last week. Yes, I do. You're very welcome. Tuck JB, same movement of the upward pedal stroke to marching movement during warm-up. Thanks for the help. You're welcome. You said my video about spondy, you have a question, Joseph. How to do the pubic bone forward. That's taught in the program. So I heard you're doing the program, Joseph. So you're going to learn that in the program, and we do it in a very systematic process so that you make sure you're not getting like compensations and creating problems elsewhere. Gilda, familiar name to me. Hi, you had an SI joint injection a week ago, was feeling better until yesterday when you had pain at night. Is this part of the recovery process? What movements should I do and which ones should I avoid? Movements to avoid, Gilda, would definitely be all laid out for you in the SI joint video on our channel, which is called Stop Hurting Your SI Joint, and it talks about all the movements to avoid. The movements to do are also addressed in that video, so the bridge is a really good one. Don't do anything too extreme, like hip extension, spine extension, but try to stay neutral, and that's the stuff from the program. You're in the program, so really I would go back and revisit Module 1, Module 2 especially, and also 3 and 4. Those are going to be beneficial to the SI joint. I don't know what injection you had, so I don't know if pain at night is part of the recovery process, but I would say typically if you're recovering, no, recovering, you're not getting, going to be getting pain at night, but there might be other factors involved. And Sherry, core member, showing up as usual. Love it. And Joseph, you're very welcome. And other Joseph, you're welcome. So we are caught up. I have, how long have we been going? Hour and 15 minutes. I have a question, 2 more questions. One from Sheila. And Sheila says, I've been diagnosed with gluteal tendinopathy, and when I do the Mastering the Perfect Bridge, I get a cramp in the back of my thigh on the same side of my greater trochanter tendinopathy. Any way around this? So it sounds like the cramp is in your hamstring, Sheila, which is extremely common and almost expected with the bridge. So that's normal. And as your hamstring learns how to function in that extremely shortened range, because that's what the hamstrings are doing in the bridge, they're in the most shortened position, and they're being asked to contract even more, which makes them cramp. That as it learns how to function like that, it will get better. The cramping should go away. But you bring in this other factor, gluteal tendinopathy, and that's on the greater trochanter, which is not actually the back of your thigh, right? It's on your side. It's on the side of your hip, right below, right basically right at your hip joint. And that's from the glute. So almost seems to me like, sure, there's a correlation, but it's not actually a causation. And the greater trochanter tendinopathy is a whole thing of its own, where tendinopathy, you don't want to avoid using the muscle and the tendon, but you don't want to use it too hard. So you want to find that middle ground where you're kind of using it like moderate, light to moderate, and that's the best way to get. And you also want to be strengthening it during that. So low repetition, high benefit activities. Like a bridge, like maintaining a bridge. Actually, I think that would be a great activity for something like this, where you're not getting a lot of repetition. Just staying up in the full bridge could be really good for strengthening the tendon without repetitive trauma, because that's one of the things that causes tendonitis. But I don't think the cramp in your hamstring is going to be too much of an issue if you just straighten your leg out when it happens, let the cramp go away, and bring it back and keep strengthening that hamstring. That should actually help support the glute and that tendon, and maybe help allow it to heal. Hopefully that helps for you. And then we got one from Doug Sleater. This is the last prepared question of the day. Doug says, I've been doing 2 stretches that I haven't seen you specifically recommend, but they really seem to be helping me do the other exercises. I'd like to confirm that I'm doing the right thing. When I first start my exercises, I go down on my knees and lower my glutes onto my heels while stretching my arms out above my head and lowering my chest to the ground. The stretch in the glutes is awesome, and I do the breathing into my spine while in this position. Feels like stretching my L3, 4, 5, S1 area. I just relax into this position for 10 to 30 seconds and move side to side to alternately increase the stretch on each glute. I also move my hands to the left to increase the stretch on my right glute and problem area, which is your right SI joint. So this is really interesting, Doug, because typically we don't need to, and I don't recommend stretching your glutes. But with this stretch, and you say you feel it stretching your L3, 4, 5, and S1 area, that's actually more your lower back muscles. And yeah, it feels good to stretch the lower back muscles because they're often really tight. Glutes typically aren't overly tight, hypertonic, but in some people they are. And so if that's the case for you, then that would feel good. But I'm wondering if your stretch that you're really feeling is mostly in your lower back muscles that do attach down on the pelvis. They attach on the top of the pelvis and right at your belt line, and that you could feel a really nice feeling stretch there, thinking it's your glutes. So just one clarification there. So you're basically doing prayer stretch. Last week's topic of the stream beforehand was how to kind of drop into that stretch without compromising your lower back. So protecting your lower back and getting the mobility in your thoracic spine. So I would review that if you haven't seen that last week's live stream. And then, so yeah, those are my thoughts on that. I don't have a huge problem with this. Just so you want to make sure you're aware of what you're actually doing. It can and does stretch the glutes. But typically we don't need to do that. But if it feels incredibly good for you, maybe your body likes it. So that could be good for you. But yeah, the reason it's not on the program is because it's just not something we typically need to do. And we don't even typically stretch the lower back muscles in the program because we're addressing the problem that's causing them to be tight. So stretching is addressing the tightness on the surface level. We're trying to go underneath that or go upstream of that and address that problem so they don't become tight. They kind of let go on their own. So that's our approach. And your second question is, when doing the back anchors, I add the knees to chest stretch, which feels really good on my lower spine. For example, when doing the bridge, if I come down and then do the knees to chest while breathing into my spine, it really allows me to go back and do another bridge without adding this stretch. I'm limited as to how many bridges I can do. Also, still not really feeling any stretch when doing the bridge. I keep doing them, trying to improve, but it's quite a challenge should it eventually become easy and relaxing to be in the bridge position. The answer to your question is eventually, yeah, it should. And if you stick with it, it will, because just because you're a human and your body will adapt to the stresses that you apply to it. You're having the luxury of being biological beings, we adapt. And so, yeah, it will get to the point for the most likely, if you stick with it, it'll get to the point where you can kind of feel like you're kind of relaxing in the bridge to some degree and breathing. And if you can really target that extension, the backward bending to go into your hips and not your lower back, that's where you would get the stretch in the hip flexors. But if that extension, the backward bending, is going into your lower back, that would explain why you like to stretch your lower back muscles so much. Because both these stretches you're talking about, 1 and 2, are for me, I would think of them mostly as lower back muscle stretches. So you have chronic lower back muscle tightness, and that could be related. It's most likely related to how you're moving and using your body. So if the bridge is going into your lower back, then I would definitely think it would feel good to do a knees to chest after doing the bridge to open it back up. And so I would consider just kind of taking a few steps back with the back anchor bridge stuff and seeing if you can go into the bridge really deliberately and in tune with your body and feel the movement of extension happening in your hip joints. The hip joint is the joint that's moving. It's not the lower back. And maybe even film yourself from the side, and then you can analyze it later, and just on your phone, and that can give you a lot of insight into what's happening where the movement is going into. But if we're bridging up, the movement's going somewhere, and that's where we want it to go. For a lot of people, like in the coaching hub, I very commonly am coaching people and showing them how that extension is actually going into their lower back. And so we need to tone it down. We need to kind of reset, go back to the basics. And I always recommend reviewing those early videos so that you can you'll pick up on things that you missed before. You weren't ready to learn them the first time you watched. And now you have gained a lot of intuition and just improved your familiarity with this stuff, and then you can watch them again and be like, oh wow, all right, I'm ready to learn that now. So that's my recommendation to you, Doug. Hopefully that makes sense. And we're going to be wrapping this thing up about an hour and a half today. I see a couple posts in the chat. Joel says, curious to hear how your general thoughts on recovery without reducing the amount of time spent sitting. Okay, yeah, you sit 10 to 12 hours a day, which has you considering a drastic change of career. Is it possible, Joel, for you to do your work? I'm assuming it's your work, but I could be wrong. I could be way wrong, but if it's your work, is it possible for you to do it in a way where you can stand a little bit at a desk, stand, sit, I can stand at this desk. It's like a high desk, so I could stand up. I'll do it for you right now. And so I'll just switch back and forth between this during my day. Stand and type at the computer a little bit, sit back down, and then I have a whole video on sitting that you should check out because you have to sit a lot. And this video is my recommendation for my best recommendation for sitting, which is variety. So change the way that you sit. Change, you know, I would recommend just watching the video because I give a lot of examples for how you can sit in different ways, and the variety is actually how you can reduce repetitive trauma. So repetitive trauma happens from doing the same thing over and over and over. So if you add variety, it can reduce that. It can be very beneficial. And also just movement in general. If you can add movement to your day in some way, even if you're sitting, blood flow, synovial fluid, nutrition to the discs is going to be increased. It has to. That's just the way the body works. So that's my thoughts. That's my general thoughts on that. But yeah, people have to sit that long. You might be a pilot, you know, who knows? So, those general thoughts. So, Joseph, is there such thing as overstretching? Yes, there is. I have talked a lot about how stretching is actually not really part of the solution process for healing back pain. Because as you know, if you stretch your muscles that are really tight, it feels good, but within a matter of hours, they usually tighten back up, if not a day, you know. They just tighten back up and you have to do it over again, and that's a cycle. That's the cycle of stretching, and we want to get out of that cycle. So we have to address the reason why they're tightening up, and that's part of the solution to back pain. The stretching them is just addressing the result of a problem at the surface level. It's not getting to the why. So overstretching, yeah, it can cause repetitive trauma. It can also, can a herniated disc be healed is another question you asked. Can it be healed? I actually made I did a live stream on this exact topic, and it's been turned into a video, so I recommend watching that. But to some degree, yeah, it's not going to be the way it was new, but it can get 100% functional and allow you to live a normal life, and that's what's important, not what you see in an MRI. Tyler Merkel, yeah, this topic of today's stream was for you, Tyler. So hopefully it answered some of your questions, and then next week I'm going to do a follow-up topic on lifting and actually carrying big or heavy objects. So that'll tie in as well. You say you're doing the bridge daily the past couple of weeks. Has certainly relaxed your hip flexors. That's great to hear. Still struggling with tight low back and spinal flexion inhibition. So spinal flexion inhibition. Can you explain what you mean by that if you're still here, Tyler? Because I don't know what you mean by that, but I was talking earlier about how spinal flexion is a good idea to not fear it, because in most cases it's not bad for the spine. Well, it's not inherently bad for the spine. It's not bad for the spine. In some cases, it can cause irritation if a disc is bulged in the right way and the nerve it's pushing on the nerve because of it. But if you got stenosis and stuff like that, it's actually it's gonna be good. It opens up the spine. So spinal flexion is not bad. It's not inherently bad, and in most cases, it's actually just not bad for somebody who has chronic back problems. That said, it's not necessarily like good either. It's just movement. It opens up the spine. It can feel good, but I wouldn't say recommend doing it over and over. So so I hope you watched the beginning of the video, Tyler, and let me know in the coaching hub, because you're in the coaching hub, let me know if the things I talked about today were helpful, or if not. And if not, let me know why, what it is that you still need and are struggling with, and where I can fill in the gaps for you. So yeah. But yeah, thanks for the update. Chronic low back tightness it takes a long time, but it actually is something that you can, with patience and persistence, you can get through. Thank you everybody for being here. Guillermo, yeah, for sure. Module 6, walking week. You can review that. Module 5 and 6 are the modules that you'll want to review. engaging all three anchors in one kind of natural kind of motion. It's not three different things anymore. We're joining them together. So module 5 and 6, Guillermo. All right, everybody. Thank you again for being here. 1.5-hour stream today. And yeah, I'm grateful for you all. So if you enjoyed the stream, hit the like button. If you know somebody that this could help, send the link over to one of your friends or family, somebody you care about. And until next week, get down on the floor and connect to your core. And I will see you then. All right, take care. Bye-bye.